Hey all, welcome you again to political theory classes. In this class, I will be talking about Marxist theory of alienation. If I ask you what is the greatest scholarly work of Karl Marx, I'm sure you will all mention his work, Das Kapital. Yes, Das Kapital is the greatest contribution of Karl Marx. It is in this book that he explained the laws governing the capitalist economy and proved that what the capitalists claim as profit is not really the reward that he gets for the risks that he takes, as it is generally claimed to be. On the contrary, the capitalist profit is nothing but the surplus value created by the working class, but exploited and extracted by the capitalists. As my focus is more on political theory of Karl Marx, I avoid discussing Marx's contribution to understanding of capitalist economy. But I would like to lecture on Marx's theory of alienation, wherein Marx discusses about the impact of capitalism on the working class. Before I say anything about alienation, I need to mention that among the Marxists themselves, there is no unanimity as to whether or not the idea of alienation is central to Marxist theory. It is because the concept of alienation is found in Marx's early works, such as 1844 manuscripts and Grundrisse, which he himself did not publish during his lifetime. Actually, these works were published only in 1920s in Soviet Russia. Some Marxist scholars believe that Marx discussed about alienation when he was still under Feuerbachian humanist influence. But in his later works, he used the exploitation, with the word exploitation, in place of alienation. However, there are also scholars who consider that the theory of alienation continues even in the works of mature Marx and is central to Marxism. Without taking sides, I will only focus on Marx's understanding of alienation. The term alienation is in use in common parallel. We all use this word alienation in different contexts. In Northeast India, the native people very often use it to convey that they are alienated from the rest of India. We also see people talking about alienation of the Muslims or the women and so on. What do you mean when someone says they are alienated? normally use the term as something synonymous with estrangement, difference, and otherness. The term connotes the divided and antithetical nature of an object or phenomenon. It refers to something that appears simultaneously as itself and also as the other. It is in a way, it conveys a kind of existential dilemma. Am I or am I not? To Hegel, who was an idealist philosopher, all material objects are products of idea. His argument goes like this. For any material object to take shape, first there should be an idea. Any material form, be it a house, book, or painting, first starts with idea. The idea, in course of time, takes an external form as a material object. But once material object comes into existence, it gets alienated from the idea. And it becomes an autonomous entity confronting the idea. And what is alienated from the idea now confronts idea and challenges it. This actually results in contradiction and confrontation. It is something like a son challenging the parents, or a machine invented by man taking away his job. Such situation, Hegel calls it alienation. How is this alienation resolved? According to Hegel, the antagonism is resolved through self-consciousness, by realizing that external object is only a projection of consciousness. Something like this is we come across in Indian philosopher Adi Shankaracharya, who says there is God in you and God in me, and hence we are all gods, and there is no difference between you and me. Such kind of realization or self-awareness, Hegel believes, resolves the problem of alienation for all time to come. When you reach that level of consciousness, that what is confronting you is nothing but a part of you, then you realize, and then the contradiction gets resolved. This is what Hegel thought about alienation. Karl Marx criticizes this idealist understanding of Hegel. Marx points out that Hegel abstracts all concrete events that take place in everyday life and sees it as a manifestation of spirit or idea, big idea. He reduces to history to idea. And what is that idea? It is, in the ultimate analysis, there is nothing called big I. What all we say idea, Marx says, is nothing but a human idea or a human thinking. Now, Marx shows that Hegel's prescription of resolution of alienation, it doesn't make sense, for it abolishes alienation only at consciousness level, but not in objective reality. Hegel looks at alienation as something synonymous with what we can call as externalization. That is something that gets the external form, which was there inside us. Now it takes an external form, and that he considers it as alienation, which Marx says no. Marx argues that externalization per se is not alienation. Marx points out that we should not assume that every material object develops contradictions with its originator. Marx says that it is only under certain historical conditions that men feel alienated. Alienation, as such, is specific to certain historical conditions. It is with this premise that Marx looks at alienation that the workers experience in capitalist societies. Actually, Marx's theory of alienation is premised on his understanding of labor. You know Adam Smith, the classical economist. He believed that the human beings always view labor as something imposed, and left to themselves, the people would escape work. If all their desires are satisfied without doing any work, they will be happy not doing any work. That is what Adam Smith believed. Contradicting Adam Smith, Karl Marx argues that labor and production are innate to human nature. Labor per se is not oppressive. Left to himself, man loves to work, not run away from work. Why? Because labor brings out human creativity. It is through labor that man creates his own identity, and he also builds civilization. But this labor becomes oppressive and makes workers feel alienated in capitalist societies. Can there be any production in capitalist society without the workers? Impossible. The working class is integral and essential to capitalist production. Why then this class feels alienated? For that to understand, we should study 4 types of alienation that Marx speaks of. First, alienation from means of production. Second, alienation from product. Third, alienation from human nature. Fourth, alienation from human species. First, I will talk about the first 2 kinds of alienation. Alienation from means of production and alienation from product. The laborer in all societies, even not only in primitive capitalist society, primitive communist societies, but also subsequently, he is closely related to the means of production. In tribal societies, he is the owner of the land. He tills and produces crop, and all that he produces belongs to him. The land belongs to him and the product belongs to him. What he would do with that product is his own choice. He can use it for himself or he can distribute it and share with others. So there is innate connection. The actual producer is in close relationship with means of production, that is land, and also the product that he produces. But subsequently, even in feudal societies, it is true that the serf does not own the means of production. Legally, he is not the owner of land, but actually he owns land. Though legally he is not the owner, the land that he takes from landlord on rent, he can say that this land belongs to me. In that land he has a hut, he will have bullocks, and he will have certain implements with the help of which he cultivates land and produces. It is true that a part of the produce is taken away by the landlord as rent. But still there is something which he can consider as his own. What is left is, he can say, this much is my own. So also, as the land, legally he may not be the owner, but he can say it is my land. But this kind of association between the actual producer with the means of production and the product, that disappears once we enter into capitalism. Here the actual producer, the worker, is completely devoid of property. He does not own any means of production. He doesn't have a land. He doesn't, even if he's an artisan, has something, a cottage industry he owns. But as capitalism develops, even the artisans are ruined and they become the workers. So here the worker is devoid of all property. So that means he gets alienated from means of production. and he has to work under someone for a wage. He sells his labor power in order to make a living. Not that he is not involved in production. He is involved in production. He is there in factories, in mines, in fields, producing different things. But yet, he cannot or he doesn't have any control over the product. So, there is alienation from the means of production and also alienation from the product. Why? This product that he produces in factories, fields and in mines, it doesn't belong to him. He cannot claim anything that he produced out of his labor power. He may be working in a biscuit factory, but he cannot take even one biscuit packet without the knowledge of the owner. Even a small pin that he produces in a factory, he cannot claim as his own. Not just that, the place of work, where he works, or quantity or quality of what he produces, how much quantity or what kind of quality of goods that one should produce, or the time and hours of work, at what time I should begin work and how many hours I work. Nothing of this is determined by the worker. There is somebody dictating him, the owner, the capitalist, and he has to work. He has to work as dictated by others. It is here that the worker feels that he is not a part of the entire production process. The object that a worker produces become independent of the producer. Now that object confronts him, dictates him, and controls him. Generally what is said, people say you produce more so that the country grows. But in capitalist society, if a worker produces more, there is very little guarantee that it benefits him. On the contrary, most likely he will be affected adversely because he produces more. The more he produces, the less he gets. You see, the machines are the product of human invention, but these machines will take away his job. Or sometimes you produce so much and there are no takers. As a result, there will be depression or a recession which will take away the job of the worker. So, what he produces now confronts him as a Frankenstein. And that is why he considers that produce not as his own, but something as an alien confronting him. And it is this which becomes the base for other two forms of alienation that Marx talks of. Because of this alienation from means of production and alienation from the product, workers begins to feel alienated from the human nature itself. Essentially, according to Marxism, I told you, man is different from animal. He is not satisfied with eating, drinking, and indulging in sex. He loves to create. He reads, he enjoys music, and goes with friends. So he engages in so many creative activities, and it is that which makes him human. But in capitalist society, all these human dimensions get distorted. The more one accumulates, here it creates the idea that all that you have to do is accumulate more and more and more. But when you accumulate more, then you express less. We express less as human beings. We consider donating something for a good cause, or spending on travel, spending on music, or devoting time on play or sports. All that is considered as useless. And we are only told all that we have to do is to work and earn money, accumulate money. So as we turn to get involved in accumulation of more and more money, we start losing human values. Because, here in capitalism, we are known by how much we accumulate, not by qualities and talents that we have. If you are a rich man, you are worshipped, you are respected. It doesn't matter whether you are a good man or a bad man. Your values and character has little of little value. Here we work only for money. In this kind of things, when you think only for working for money, then why this money? We say for enjoyment. What is this enjoyment? We start thinking that we are enjoying when we eat, when we booze, when we involve in sex. But this kind of enjoyment is something which even animals do. The other kinds of enjoyment which the human beings used to do earlier, that now disappears. So enjoyment of what we call enjoyment in capitalist society, it is something similar to the way that animals enjoy. So it is in these activities that now people get involved. Now you start hating the work. You don't like the work that you do. Because that doesn't give you joy. Why do you work? You work only because it gives you money. If that work doesn't give you money, you immediately get out of that work. So even if that work you don't love, you work because there is no other way for you or your family to survive. That's why you work, but you hate that work. Rather, we try to escape from that work as much as possible. So when there is no work, we enjoy. So when there is strike, when there is factories or the government offices don't work, we all are happy. Why? Because we don't enjoy that work. So we look for leisure and start enjoying only the animal activities. And this is the kind of degradation that we experience in capitalist societies. And this actually leads to alienation from other species. Now man is alienated from another man. You know what Aristotle says? Man by nature is social. But in capitalist societies, we become too individualistic and too selfish that this kind of the social character of human beings now get disrupted. Human relations turns into relations between things. This Marx calls it as commodity fetishism. We worship commodities. We are known by commodities that we produce or we accumulate. We are not seen as human beings. So the relationship among the people now becomes commodity relations. Man turns into inhuman, self-centered and aggressively competitive person. He begins to view all others as rivals and foes, enemies. Workers and capitalists start seeing each other as enemies. No communication is possible between them. Both see each other as enemies and fear and hate each other. It's not just that workers and capitalists fight. Even among the capitalists, they may all be united against the workers, but they fight among themselves. They compete among themselves. Each one tries to outdo the other. So everybody becomes enemy to the other. So it is in this kind of situation now the entire human relations get distorted, and human beings as a whole feel alienated. Actually, taking clue from this concept of alienation propounded by Marx, many other theoreticians in the post-war world, they have reflected on growing loneliness, fear, insecurity, perversions that and crimes that we see in the modern societies. So these are all manifestations of what Marx would call as alienation. Now comes the question, how can the workers or the people overcome this alienation? Marx is not idealist who believes that through consciousness or self-awareness you can overcome alienation. No. To Marx, the worker experiences these forms of alienation only in capitalist societies. Hence, within the capitalist framework, there is no way of escaping alienation. Alienation exists as long as commodity production, class exploitation, and social oppression continue. Marx believes that only in future communist society, with the gradual elimination of private property, commodity production, difference between mental and physical labor, and subsequent withering of the state, that the alienation starts disappearing. And the contradiction between man and labor cease to exist. How does that happen? When does that happen? To find answers, we need to study Marxist understanding of the transition to communism that I will explain to you in subsequent classes. Now, before I stop this lecture, I let you know that in the next lecture I will read out some of the passages from Marx on the concept of alienation, and will give you some references which are useful for you to understand his theory of alienation. For the moment, thank you, and let us meet in the next class.